budget is the single most important thing, and people should get out their calendars and they should circle about May 15th, because that's when this is all going to come to a head. That's when there's going to be a vote on the debt ceiling, on whether to extend that or not. And that's a situation where if Congress doesn't extend the debt ceiling, the country could go into default. We would look silly internationally. We'd look like Greece. No one wants that to happen. But everything that's going on right now is kind of preliminary. This is kind of jockeying for position. The Republicans are trying to stake out what they want to do on the budget. The President's staking out what he wants to do. There'll be some action on some continuing resolutions between now and then, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every 3 or 4 weeks. But the real action, where push comes to shove, is on the debt ceiling vote, because you can't avoid that. If Congress doesn't extend the debt ceiling, then the government can't borrow money. It can't go into the market. It can't borrow money from foreign lenders. It can't issue notes and bonds to borrow money from its own citizens. So that gets very, very interesting. The other thing that's going on is the presidential election in 2012. I mean, let's be realistic here. This has already started, and the president's budget was kind of the first shot at that, because the president has to look at the states that he must carry. There are 8 industrial states in the Midwest, all of which the president carried last time. And then in 2010, his party, the Democratic Party, lost almost all of those states. Almost all of those states went Republican for governor, went Republican for the state legislature. If the president lost all of those 8 states, he would not be reelected. So he's got to kind of start right there. He has to at least break even in those Midwestern states, and he doesn't have to carry all 8 of them, but he sure better carry at least 4 of them. And that's why you look at the budget and you say, okay, what's he doing for those states? Well, he's trying to help the automobile industry. He's got a proposal in his budget for 1 million plug-in electric vehicles, cars. Those would be made presumably by American manufacturers. A lot of their plants, a lot of their people are in those Midwestern states, so it's not too hard to figure out what's going on here. Then the president last time carried 3 southern states. He's going to have real trouble carrying those 3 southern states. That was North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida. And so you look at what he's doing in his budget and you say, okay, what are the problems for him in carrying those states? Well, he wants to cut programs that affect minorities. He carried those 3 states because of a large black vote. Very interesting when you look at this, and you can see what's going on. The president has his agenda. The Democrats decided to put the National Convention in North Carolina, hoping that that would make a point that they still care about the South, but that may not be enough if some of these budget cuts go through that directly affect minority voters. So very interesting going on. What the Republicans are doing is trying to establish that they're the legitimate ones who care about the deficit, who are willing to take strong medicine to do something about the deficit. They see that playing out among independent voters, particularly in the Midwest, but in some other states too. Government shutdown does matter, because look what happened. I was in Congress in 1995, the last time this came up. I was chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, 95, 96, 97, and 98. And Gingrich made an enormous mistake by forcing a government shutdown. The government was closed for about 3 weeks. Clinton clearly outmaneuvered Gingrich, made him look silly, and the Republicans are trying to do everything they can not to repeat the errors that Gingrich made in 95. Boehner was there. Some of the new Republicans weren't there, but Boehner was there. He's seen this movie. He knows how this comes out. And so they want to go right to the brink. They want to establish, yes, they're very, very serious about doing something, but they don't want to close down the government. And I don't think the president wants the government to be closed down either. So this is kind of a game of chicken that's going on every couple of weeks now. And ultimately, the 2 cars are not going to collide, I don't believe. Someone's going to veer off. It's just a question of in which time does the president veer off, and which time do the Republicans veer off. You've got a controversy now brewing between the 2 Democratic leaders in Congress, Pelosi and Reid. Reid wants to accommodate things. He wants to try and work things out. Pelosi's in the position of we're not for any of this, but she's got the advantage in that she's in the minority. So her votes don't really count anyway. The Democrats in the House can take as extreme a position as they want, and the Republicans have the votes. They'll pass something, send it over to the Senate, and then it's up to Reid to try and make some sense out of this. He's the one who actually has the burden of governing at this point, not the Democrats in the House.
Shifting gears a little bit, how much of the Middle East is taking the president's focus away from domestic issues, and is that a big factor in the political landscape here?
Well, actually, the Mideast has turned out so far to be okay for the president. It clearly takes your focus away, because I don't care who you are, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how many good people you have working for you. When you have an international crisis, it diverts your attention. You're capable of doing more than one thing at once, but this is real difficult for the White House, because they have to weave their way through this. What they have to do is to show that they're on the side of democracy, but they can't do anything foolish. They can't be blamed for a civil war, for example, in Libya or anywhere else. So the president was able to maneuver the Egyptian situation pretty well. The reason for that is we, the United States, have been giving the Egyptian military $2 billion a year. The president did just enough to make it clear that Mubarak had to go, but didn't try and kick him out on the first day. The Libyan situation has been much tougher for the president, of course, because you have an unstable leader in Gaddafi. And the real problem for the president is if this continues in other countries in that region. If you have 5 or 6 of these brush fires happen, then that really does divert the administration's attention, because he's looking presidential so far, but there's always a possibility that one of these things could spin out of control. And the Republicans look bad when they criticize the president, I believe, on foreign policy, unless he does something outrageous. Because we have a tradition in this country that politics stops at the water's edge. And you've seen some of the more experienced Republican leaders who've basically been supportive of what the president's done. You have some people who are running for president who don't serve in Congress, and so they can go off and say crazy things and criticize the president. He's not doing enough, he should have done this. But as long as the president follows a rational path, kind of a middle road, this helps him. This raises his prestige as a national leader and in fact as president. There's some people who had a hard time accepting his legitimacy of being president of the United States, because he'd only been in the Senate for a few years. He came on the scene as a new figure. He didn't have extensive foreign policy experience. So there are a lot of people in the public who were looking very skeptically. They voted for him because they didn't like what had been going on under Bush, but they've been looking skeptically. And this is actually, I believe, helped him, because he's shown that he's a pretty good, decisive national leader. We want our national leaders to be able to handle an international emergency when it comes up. We don't want them spending all their time on that. We want them spending their time on the economy, but we want them to be respected worldwide, and so far he's done okay.